elite player in NBA history, and we're not only talking about his freakishly long limbs. Just about everybody knows that Manute was 7'6", and that just his legs were 5 feet long. But just like his physical appearance, his life story was different from any other NBA player ever. Other than Manute, nobody traded 80 cows in exchange for their wife. Nobody had to walk for 3 days just to reach the nearest basketball court or have their teeth removed to be respected as a man. And while most NBA players only saw lions in the zoo or while watching National Geographic, Manute had to live amongst lions and allegedly killed one with a spear. Bol was also a great humanitarian who warned America about Osama bin Laden way before 9/11 and was one of the key people in South Sudan's fight for independence. This is the story of the most unusual NBA player ever, and his unbelievable path from the African desert to NBA superstardom. Manute was born into a royal family, but it wasn't like he was living in a castle or slept on satin sheets. His grandfather was a tribe chief in Turalai, a small village in South Sudan in the middle of the African savannah. They were part of the Dinka tribe, who are the tallest people on earth. Manute's grandfather was allegedly 7'10", his father was 6'10", and his mom was 6'8". Bol's family lived in sheds filled with cockroaches, but they had plenty of cows, and cows were worshipped in their culture and served as the major currency. However, young Manute didn't want to be an illiterate cow herder like the rest of his village. So when his father asked him to participate in a manhood initiation ritual where they would remove his lower teeth and scar his head, Manute ran away from home. He loved his teeth and thought the ritual was stupid. All he wanted was to go to school. Bol ran away from home 2 times, walking for a few days to reach the nearest town with a school. But at the age of 14, after he heard that his mother had died, Manute felt terribly guilty and decided to come back. Bol finally agreed to do the manhood ritual, partly because he wanted to get closer to his father, and partly because he knew that Dinka girls wouldn't consider him as marriage material if he hadn't done it. This rite of passage was a huge deal in his tribe, and if he flinched or cried during the teeth removal or head scarring ritual, it would be considered a disgrace, and he could never find a wife. However, he would probably stay an illiterate cattle farmer all his life if someday in 1978 a local politician didn't visit Turalai, where he was amazed by Manute's height. They took a picture together where Manute ended up in the newspapers, and that changed everything. Bol's distant relative was a basketball player, and when he saw Manute's picture, he immediately wanted Manute to pursue a basketball career. But to get to the nearest basketball court in the city of Wau, Manute had to walk 50 miles. Between that hike and Manute not being too thrilled about basketball, it wasn't long before he went back to his home village. But his basketball-playing cousin didn't want to give up on him, so he sent another mutual relative on a mission to convince Manute to play. Joseph Victor Bol, a pilot with Sudan Airways, came to Turalai to talk to Manute, telling him that there is a basketball league in America called the NBA, and he could become rich and famous if he took basketball seriously. And when Manute heard that, the choice was easy. Disregarding his father's complaints, wealth and fame had more appeal than the family cows. So, in November of 1979, he started playing again. But to say that he was terrible would be an understatement. When he first got here, he couldn't do anything. He was weak and got pushed around. Even a small player could pass by him and score. Offensively, Bol could not control his feet. Even when he walked, he didn't know how to handle the ball properly or shoot a jump shot, Manute's first coach. And yet, this wasn't the worst problem Bol had. Because of a birth defect, 3 of his right-hand fingers were slightly clawed, which made it hard for him to catch the ball. But because he had an extreme motivation to move out of Sudan and go to America, Bol learned the fundamentals and improved quickly. Bol's footwork on defense became much better, and he developed a remarkable sense of timing for blocking shots. Manute was right-handed, but because of the clawed fingers on that hand, he learned to swat away basketballs with his left hand. And it wasn't long before his team became the best in the country. Basketball was everything Bol ever did at that time, until the spring of 1982, when he met a beautiful Dinka girl whom he intended to marry. Her dad accepted Manute's proposal, but he wanted 50 cows for his daughter's hand in marriage. Manute's father thought that was too expensive, because the girl's family didn't have many cows, and he felt that they were being robbed. Bol Sr. then gave the ultimatum: 35 cows or the wedding was off. The bride's father didn't accept, and just like that, it was all over, and Manute was destroyed. So, more than ever, he put all his focus into basketball. And just a few months later, an American collegiate coach, Don Feely, came to Sudan to help coach the local military team. When Feely first saw Manute with his 7'6" frame and his 8'6" wingspan, his jaw dropped to the floor. And then, when Bol dunked without jumping and could touch both sides of the backboard simultaneously, Feely knew that Bol was destined to play in the NBA. When Feely came back to the States, he kept raving about Manute to Kevin Mackey, the head coach at Cleveland State. Coach Mackey was very intrigued by Bol, and in 1983, he arranged for Manute to come to Cleveland. However, because Dinka people didn't have birth certificates, Manute's real age was a mystery. His passport only said his hometown and that he was 5'2". When they measured me, I was sitting down, Bol later explained. With the help from a local immigration office, Mackey basically invented a birthday for Bol, October 16, 1962. I wanted to make sure he was young enough to make him college eligible, because every athletic door is open at 19, and every athletic door is closed when you're 35. Mackey. But while Mackey and some other people speculated that Manute was over 30 when he came to America, he was probably only a few years older than his imaginary birthday, meaning that in 1983 he was about 25 years old. Unfortunately for Coach Mackey, Bol was completely illiterate, which meant he couldn't meet the academic requirements necessary for basketball eligibility. So they sent him to nearby Case Western University to learn English. Still, despite the shady information in his documents, the fact that he barely spoke English and that he weighed only 190 pounds at 7'6", Bol already had an NBA team ready to draft him. Through Don Feely's relationship with the Clippers head coach Jimmy Lyman, the Clippers found out about Bol and were ready to roll the dice on him, selecting him in the 5th round of the 1983 NBA draft with the 97th overall pick. The whole NBA was stunned because nobody had ever heard of Bol, but Manute never ended up playing for the Clippers. Because Bol had not stated his intention to enter the draft 45 days before it was held, the draft selection was voided. Bol then continued his career at the University of Bridgeport, which was one of the rare universities that also offered an English learning program. Unsurprisingly, when he first arrived at the Bridgeport campus, Bol was, at first, treated like a UFO. When he started playing, the hype got even bigger, as people were eager to see Manute in action. And Bol did not disappoint. In his one season at Bridgeport, he averaged 22.5 points, 13.5 rebounds, and 7 blocks per game. Pretty soon, Bol became extremely popular, and he wasn't just Don Feely's secret prospect anymore, as the whole NBA knew about him. But while Feely wanted him to stay in college and continue developing, Manute needed money to support himself and his family back in Sudan. And after a short stint for the Rhode Island Gulls in a minor basketball league, Bol declared for the 1985 NBA draft. He was still extremely skinny, inexperienced, and probably the least skilled out of all the players in the draft. But his height and length were Bol's golden ticket, and the Washington Bullets couldn't resist, selecting him in the 2nd round as the 31st overall pick. As a rookie, Bol appeared in 80 games, completely sucking on offense and being an absolute menace on defense. Bol blocked 397 shots that season, which was, and still is, the 2nd highest total in NBA history. Manute was still super thin at 205 pounds, and he was easily pushed around.
Jammed over Bol.
But thin doesn't mean he was soft. When Jawan Oldham, a center for the Chicago Bulls, shoved and punched him in a game, Bol responded. He knocked down Oldham with a punch that triggered a massive brawl between the two teams. However, his temper wouldn't get tested often, as everybody viewed Bol as a gentle giant, which he was. Soon, Manute became a media sensation, landing endorsements typically reserved for far more established players. Before his 2nd season, the Bullets wanted to improve Bol's greatest liability as a player, his lack of strength. When he first arrived in Washington, Manute could only do 10 reps on bench press with 44 pounds, and 10 reps of squats with 55 pounds. So, in the summer, Bol attended a nutrition camp in New Orleans, eating more than he had ever eaten in his life. He gained 30 pounds in 6 weeks and reported to the Bullets' preseason camp visibly stronger. And yet, the arrival of Hall of Fame center Moses Malone meant less playing time for Bol, which dropped him from 26 minutes per game in his rookie year to only 19 minutes as a sophomore. However, he still averaged 3.7 blocks per game, with the highlight game when Bol registered an unusual triple-double. 10 points, 19 rebounds, and an unbelievable 15 blocked shots. In his 3rd season, Manute played even less, and the only notable thing from that season is that he was the teammate of Muggsy Bogues, the shortest player in NBA history, with a 28-inch difference between them. At this point, the novelty of living in America wore off, and Manute was getting homesick. Due to the civil war in Sudan that started in 1983, the year he moved to America, Bol wasn't able to come home for years. He couldn't even attend his father's funeral. Slowly Slowly but surely, Manute was becoming extremely depressed, and one of the biggest reasons was that he couldn't find a Dinka wife in America and could never marry a woman that's not from his culture. But finally, in 1988, he found a Dinka woman he wanted to marry through a mutual friend, paying an 80-cow dowry for her hand. Later that summer, the Wizards traded him to the Warriors, where Manute started playing more minutes, again leading the league in blocks, with 4.3 rejections in just 22 minutes per game. And despite his blocking prowess, most players wanted to put Manute on a poster and dunk all over him, and Michael Jordan wasn't the exception. During a game in 1989, Jordan succeeded in his mission and dunked all over Manute and his 7'4" teammate Ralph Sampson. When Sampson asked Bol what happened, Manute answered with the phrase no American had heard before, "My bad." His broken English made everyone laugh, and by the end of the season, the whole NBA started saying "my bad" when they made a mistake. The phrase soon became mainstream, even though some people dispute that Bol had anything to do with it.
Well, he came over and he calls it "my bad," so now all the Warriors, they say "my bad."
Bol stayed with the Warriors for 2 seasons, after which they traded him to the 76ers. With the Sixers, Bol cashed in, signing a 3-year deal for $4.5 million. But Manute wasn't good at keeping his money. Throughout his time in the NBA, Bol had given money to any family member who asked for it. It didn't matter who it was, because in Dinka culture, every family member is to be treated the same as your closest brother. Other than his family, Bol also gave a lot of money, more than $3 million, to his Sudanese countrymen in the war for independence. He organized charities, appeared in Congress talking about the war, as well as secretly traveled to Sudan and visited the war zone, while still being an active NBA player. Manute was one of the first people who warned Congress of a man who lived in Sudan and plotted the death of Americans, Osama bin Laden. It's a mystery how he knew the al-Qaeda leader's intentions, almost a decade before 9/11. But as his activism grew, Bol's basketball career started to collapse. However, in 1993, during his last season in Philadelphia, Bol had a memorable game against former teammate Charles Barkley and his Phoenix Suns. Bol made 6 threes in one half with his unorthodox slingshot jumper.
Manute with the fling 3, got it!
Which still stands as the Sixers' record for most threes in a half. Sadly, this crazy three-pointer game was one of the last Manute highlights in the NBA. After being surprisingly durable and missing only 54 games during his first 8 NBA seasons, Manute's body started to break down. In 1994 and 1995, he appeared in only 19 games, after which he retired from the NBA. Because Manute was also a guy who liked to party and buy drinks for everyone around him, and because he was also a gambler, Manute soon ran out of money. His wife even won $500,000 on slot machines in Atlantic City at one point, but they both soon squandered that money right back. In 1998, when he returned to Sudan, Manute had between $50,000 and $100,000 left. The northern government offered him a job as a minister of sport, and Manute initially accepted. But after they asked him to become a Muslim, he refused, and the government got extremely mad at him. So when America dropped bombs on Sudan, they accused him of being an American spy, and he had to live like an outlaw. 3 years after he arrived in Sudan as royalty, he returned to America as a refugee. When he got back to the US, Bol did everything he could to earn a dollar. He appeared on Celebrity Boxing, defeating the NFL defensive end William Refrigerator Perry. He even signed up for ice hockey, horse jockeying, and various other escapades to make money. Manute did manage to earn back some money that he had squandered over the years, and in 2005, when the war in Sudan was finally over, Manute returned home. Over the next 5 years, he put all his efforts into building a school in his native Turalai, as well as traveling across the whole country and promoting independence for South Sudan. However, this was extremely painful for Manute, who suffered from rheumatoid arthritis and couldn't walk without a cane due to injuries he suffered in a car crash a few years earlier. Still, even though he somehow had to be carried from town to town, Manute kept preaching to people that they needed to vote for independence. Unfortunately, in 2010, Bol got a rare skin disease that caused infections, and he died of kidney failure. Less than a year after his death, South Sudan declared independence, with 98% of people showing up at the polls. Manute Bol won the biggest fight of his life, becoming even bigger than his 7'6" body.